Welcome to Sold with Webinars, a podcast that aims to uncover how the most successful experts, coaches, consultants, and e-course professionals sell their products and services with just one sales presentation or webinar. A simple sales webinar can transform the business and life of a solopreneur. And this podcast will show you how other experts just like you are generating 6 and 7 figures per year online with their webinars. So let's get started. Hey everyone, Joel Irway here, and welcome to another episode of Sold with Webinars. Now today we have a very special guest who I know you are going to enjoy this interview. Her name is Annie Grace, and she runs a website called This Naked Mind. And one of the great things about this interview, and I was really excited to talk about this, is because of her niche. Now, one of the things that people always ask me is, Joel, can I run a webinar if I'm not in a make money online or business opportunity niche? You're going to want to listen to Annie's story because, number one, it's inspiring because she did this all while she was pregnant and delivering her child. And she talks about the transformation that her business went through from doing a different type of launch method and then converting it to a webinar. So without further ado, let's jump right into today's episode. I know you're going to love it. Annie, welcome to Sold with Webinars.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Yeah, it's great. I'm really excited.
So Annie and I met through a mutual group that we're in, a mutual mastermind that we're in, and she had posted her story about the success that she had with her webinar. And as soon as I read it, like I private messaged her right away. I'm like, let's get you on the podcast because this is going to be fun. So Annie, why don't you fill our audience in on a little bit about who you are, what's your background, what's your story about how you created the product, and give us a 2 to 3 minute brief intro about your journey.
Yeah, great. So I was big corporate marketing, sort of on the branding, offline marketing side. I didn't know much of anything about digital marketing. I ran the digital marketing team because I was the chief marketing officer for the company I was with. But they were below me, and I looked at the numbers and then translated them to the senior board. So I certainly wasn't well aware of anything. It's been a ground-up learning experience. But I had an instance where just in my personal life, I found myself actually, ironically, as many corporate people do, drinking more alcohol than I ever thought I was going to. And so through that experience, I ended up writing a book, putting it out for download, got a ton of downloads. And then a friend of mine said, hey, if you're passionate about this, which I became quite passionate about it, seeing that you can actually help people and change their lives and getting letters. And I mean, it was a whole different thing than honestly like marketing foreign currency, which is what I was doing before. And so it ignited this passion. And a friend of mine, he said, if you really want to be able to do this full time, you really should look at doing a video course. And I hadn't really heard of like info products before. I didn't even know what that meant, but it made sense to me. I also knew that people learn better visually often, and the message could have a lot more impact with a video course. So I kind of dedicated the better part of last year to developing this video course. Came out with it last October, and Joel, I couldn't sell it because I didn't know what I was doing. So
talk about the your sales strategy for how you wanted to launch this originally before you did a webinar. First of all, your story is amazing, by the way. Like talking about the issues with alcohol. I mean, I think it's fascinating. The first time I heard you talk about it, I'm like, oh well, and we were briefly talking about this before we went live. I'm like, oh well, I don't know if that's mass market, but then you shared with me your results. I'm like, clearly it's mass market. Clearly there's lots of people who need this and who want this, and so. I think it's awesome. I love hearing about your product for sure.
Well, I'll just tell you a quick statistic. I didn't know either. I thought I was kind of like alone in my I never felt, physically addicted. I just kind of felt like I needed a drink, and I don't like to feel like I need anything except especially something in a bottle. And that just wasn't comfortable for me. I've since learned that 78% of Americans drink regularly, and of regular drinkers, 90% of them wish, at least on occasion, that they drink less. So if that's, just regularly wishing you drink less, or that's the waking up the next morning and be like, oh man, I overdid it last night. 90% of people do struggle to some degree with how much they're drinking, which is nuts. So
amazing. So corporate America, you went from corporate America to now jumping into full-blown entrepreneurship, launching your own video course. And how did you first try to launch your course, and what were your ideas behind that?
So I was getting a significant amount of organic subscribers, just kind of word of mouth. I give my book for free. Sure, it sells on Amazon, it sells well, but I also have a landing page where you can get it for free because I just wanted to get in the hands of as many people. And so people would come into my kind of sales sequence that way. And I had read a book called Launch by Jeff Walker. And I had tried to he has 4 video sequences. So I was doing that. So I was sending out these free videos and stuff. And I was maybe out of 100 people selling one video course off the back end of it. The thing that made me nuts though, was that one person would go through it and they'd be like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing ever. And they'd post about it. And so I knew I had something really great. But I just couldn't figure out how to sell it. And I was actually told by someone in Joel and I's mutual group, he came up to me and he said, look, you have something. And if you can't learn how to sell it, you are doing a disservice to God and yourself. Because honestly, and so that kind of hit me between the eyes, like, okay, I need to figure this problem out. I need to get this out there to people who need it. And I felt this huge calling to do that. But the Jeff Walker thing wasn't working. And I have a few theories about why. I think, when people are in the grips of feeling like, oh, I drank too much last night, or I really want to change this, it's an emotional feeling and it's quite instantaneous. And so putting them through a 10-day email sequence, by the time they got to the offer, that emotion had left. They got back in control. They hadn't kind of overdone it. Their wife wasn't mad at them anymore, whatever the case was. And so there was no urgency. So I started thinking, okay, well, a webinar actually would give, if somebody is looking for it, they could look for it, consume it, and then quickly get where they needed to get. So I thought, oh, maybe this would work.
So you touched on something that's so critical that a lot of times we can't uncover what you uncover until you actually go through it. So I know a lot of people who've done launches before with Jeff Walker, and they've had success with it. And I've had a lot of people who have also struggled, almost very similar to your story. One of the things that is so important to realize is that if you're talking to a very, very hot market, meaning they've got a screaming problem, like they want to get it solved right away, you can't hold back the product because you're only reducing like your own success, right? Anytime you add a step, it's just another drop-off point. And sometimes you need it, other times you don't. And I think as you found, dripping out videos over a certain period, it just wasn't what your market wanted because this was a hot market. And I commend you for realizing that. And that takes a brilliant mind to actually see that because a lot of people will just say, oh, it didn't work, but you know exactly why it didn't work. I can guarantee 100% that's why it didn't work.
Well, that's good to hear. Yeah, it was my theory, but no, it's good. It makes so much sense when you put it in those terms. Absolutely.
Cool. So now, when did you transition? When did you kill the PLF style funnel and transition to a webinar?
So interestingly, and this is kind of a bit more of my personal story, I launched my video course in October, found out I was pregnant, and then spent, the next 9 months trying to figure out how to sell this better. And I ended up signing up. I knew I had a funnel problem, and I heard of something called Funnel Hacking Live. I'd never even known who Russell Brunson was or anything, but I went to that and he started explaining his formula for webinars. And I was like, oh, this makes a lot of sense. And so I worked really hard kind of going through his steps and whatnot. And Joel, I actually downloaded your case studies and studied those and went through those in pretty minute detail to say, okay, what can I do with this? And was able to launch my webinar. I knew I had to do an auto webinar because I was about to have this new baby. But I launched my webinar literally like 7 days before I had the baby. And I just kind of had to put it out there in the universe and say, okay, I hope this works because, here comes this baby. I'm not going to have any time. And so I just went ahead and launched it. And, it's been really humbling, to be honest, the results, because I think that people, they do need what they need when they need it. And to have found something to get it into their hands has just, it's been freeing. It's taken that, okay, I have this obligation to kind of get this in people's hands who need it to, okay, I'm doing that. Now, how can I do more of it? Which is great.
So when I talk to people about their funnels and especially their webinars, like I'm kind of like the anti-funnel guy. Like I want to go as short and sweet as possible because if I add multiple steps, like I just get ADD, I lose focus. And anyway, so inside of your webinar, tell me about what the core pain points are that really resonate with your audience, that connects with them and gets them to ultimately want to take your course. Like what are the core messages that you talk about? Well,
one thing that I learned both from some of your work and from Russell's work was that a lot of webinars just I had done a lot of webinars just in terms of being asked to speak via webinar with an expert or via a summit or whatever. And so I had done a lot of those, and there was always so much interest and attraction for the topic and people who could relate because it felt very not threatening. But often you're giving so much information that people feel like, oh, they got what they got. And so they walk away and they don't feel like a need for anything else. And so recently I had understood this idea of changing somebody's mindset or belief in the webinar is actually more valuable than it is to provide them with answers or solutions. And by changing their belief and not necessarily giving them all the answers, because let's be honest, who can do that in 2 hours, you are providing more value and you're breaking belief patterns, which allows for their growth and their kind of, especially in my case, freedom from the problem. And so the belief patterns that I try to break in my webinar is, they're really pretty simple, but when somebody is having this, what I call cognitive dissonance around drinking, meaning they both want to drink more and less at the same time, there's this internal battle, they feel very alone. The truth is they're not. Per that statistic I related earlier, they feel like it's going to be a long, hard struggle to get out of it. And it's just not. It's not going to be long or hard once you can understand how the brain works and how to actually change your thinking around it. And they really think that they're going to have to give up their social life, like they're going out and being friendly. And that's just not true at all. And I mean, I know lots of people who, what I call non-drinkers, never drinkers, who actually never even took a sip of alcohol. And they're some of the most fun-loving people I know. They have more fun. And actually alcohol, it kind of dupes you into thinking you really need it to have fun. That's just not true either. And that's such a limiting belief. Like if you believe that by stopping doing something, you're never going to be able to have fun again or relax again or enjoy yourself again, it becomes really hard to stop doing it. So if I can free somebody by giving them all sorts of examples, both neurological, scientific, whatever, that those things aren't true, they leave the webinar with hope that there is possibility for change. And I've gotten a lot of feedback, even though there's definitely a pitch at the end for the course. I've gotten a lot of feedback just in the value of that hope. Like, okay, I know now that things could be different. And I think that's been, really important.
It's amazing. I call it the expert curse, right? When people feel like they have to teach on a webinar and they teach, and ultimately when you teach so much in an hour-long webinar or however long it is, you teach so much that you confuse them, and a confused mind doesn't buy. And you're 100% right. Like inspiration, transformation, and hope is the whole goal of the webinar. And it's conflicting for experts sometimes to hear that and to understand that, because they're the teacher, they're the expert. All they want to do is teach. And so they feel like if I'm just giving them hope and inspiration and breaking their belief patterns, they don't see it. Most of them don't see it as breaking their belief patterns. They just see it as, oh, I'm not teaching, so I'm a fraud. I mean, internally, it's a huge battle that we have to overcome. But, in every form of transformation, that has to happen, whether you're buying a course or no matter what you're buying, but you have to believe that it'll work before you actually receive it. So, that's awesome. Very cool. How much is your course, by the way?
So it sells normally on my website for $597, and then on the webinar, it's $397.
Cool.
Yeah.
So what's the volume? What's your funnel statistics look like? Let's break it down for a little bit.
Yeah. So before the webinar, I was selling about, I don't know the numbers, but I was selling about $8,000 worth a month. And now I'm closer to $40 a month. And that's just, without a launch, just kind of organically. Most of that, I'd say 85% of that, I just barely started Facebook advertising. I've sold maybe 10% via Facebook ads. Most of that is actually organic traffic, because I'm really blessed in the sense that my free book, which, again, I feel really good about breaking the belief patterns and giving the hope, because if you can't afford the webinar, like go get the free book and then you have the solution. And so for me, that's, it's really important to me. Like the number one thing I want to do here kind of with this whole passion is make sure that people get the help and the change that they're looking for. And I feel so thankful that I feel free from kind of this alcohol trap I found myself in, that I just want to pass that on. So this free book, and it's funny because my husband is a finance guy, and he always is like, oh gosh, you're giving it away for free. That's like our livelihood. Like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I guarantee you, every time I give it away for free, I sell more books and I get more Amazon reviews. It's just like this cycle that you give it away for free. And so it's been picked up and shared, not by me, but by other people on groups like Reddit. There's a stop drinking forum that has 40,000 people. There's a group called Hello Sunday Morning that has 90,000 people. And so people just share this free book link. And so they come into the webinar funnel that way. And that's really cool, because then I still can give them some free content up front. And then the last email in that sequence, I still have my Jeff Walker sequence in there. I just kind of walk them through those videos. And then the last email in that sequence is plans later today. And then that gives them access to the webinar. And then I've also changed my homepage to be the webinar registration page. And I get probably, I'd say about 80,000 visitors a month for my homepage. So then, people sign in, which is great.
That's so awesome. So 80,000 visitors a month, and you're now generating about $40,000 per month in revenue. So from almost all free organic traffic, you're generating 50 cents per visitor.
Oh, great. Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
Not the math person in the family, but yes.
That's so cool. So when did you launch the auto webinar again? You said you launched that right when you're about to give birth, 7 days before you delivered, right?
Right. So May 14th, I can tell you exactly, because she was born May 21st.
Cool. So
I launched it to my subscriber list first. So I just sent it out to them with really simple, just one email, just saying, hey, I did this webinar if you're interested. That did... a lot of my subscribers are my subscribers because they've already read my book. They've already found freedom, or they want to be in my newsletter. So it wasn't huge. I'd say that did probably like $30,000 worth of people just with the launch. And then I went on to I made it my homepage. So then that was the big dial turner right there. And then I added it to that 10 email sequence. Now there's a lot of things that I know I still can do. Like right now it's really simple, and I think it's too simple. So basically they register for the webinar, they get a reminder email 10 minutes before it starts. They go through the webinar. The next day I send out a replay email. And then the day after that, I send out a final chance to watch the replay email. And that's it. So what's missing there, I don't ever send them an email with the offer, which is really dumb. So they have to basically watch the whole webinar to get the offer. So actually, before we got on, I was like, I need to fix that, especially before I talk to Joel. But I didn't fix it yet. I'm going to this week. And so I'm going to start to send out right after my webinar is over, I'm going to send the webinar is over. Lots of people are asking about the offer, which I always do get lots of people asking. And then send out an offer link with kind of a sales page, which again, I was just sending them to like a checkout page. So I'm adding a sales page into my sequence so that if somebody didn't watch it, they can actually learn about what the offer is, because that was just big and missing. So all those sales are just from people who are actually going all the way through the webinar. And I think a lot of people, what we were talking about earlier, maybe the webinar is too big of a barrier, because I do sell full price courses, just people hear about it from a friend, they want to go right and buy it. So I think I can get it in more people's hands by fixing those holes.
So what's next? You've got the funnel working. I mean, it might not be completely built out. You're doing $30,000 to $40,000 a month with just this webinar. Where do you go next? In your mind, as now a successful product owner and a successful training course creator, where do you want to go next to take this to the next level? What are your ideas?
In my business overall, one thing I've noticed is that, my book, it's called Control Alcohol. And you really have to be wanting to look for a solution. And it's interesting because I think there's a lot of people who hear about my stuff and they're like, oh, that's cool. I've never really thought about that before. Yeah, I don't love how much I drink, but it just seems like the thing to do with so many people. And I actually get Amazon reviews from people saying, I read your book for a friend. And then I ended up really cutting back on my own drinking, and I'm really stoked about it. So thank you so much. And so I thought, well, there's actually a lot of people who aren't looking for it, but need a lower barrier to entry kind of to the conversation. So ideally, if I could say, okay, what would I love to do with this business is I would love to change the perception of it's really taboo to talk about drinking too much. We've made it like this, oh gosh, then you're an alcoholic and you're totally screwed for life and yada, yada. And I would just like to make it, we could talk, if me and a girlfriend were sitting down over some donuts, we would be like, oh gosh, they have so much calories. And we'd talk about the health effect and it would limit us. We'd only have a donut. If we were sitting down over some glasses of Chardonnay, we're not going to talk about the fact that that's going to cause breast cancer, and I just want to make that conversation less taboo and more normal. So what I'm hoping to do is just launch a 30-day alcohol experiment. And I'm writing a book about it. Hope that I'll have it out early next year. And it's just going to be for any person who wants to, just give it a go for 30 days, see how it is, and then make some mindful decisions about drinking instead of just kind of just being. I was very swept up in it. I was swept up in the corporate culture. I was told that the bar was somewhere to,
get new
make
business
deals. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just kind of jumped in, and there was no mindfulness about it. I'd love to just bring the conversation into like a less scary, more mindful spot in our society. And so through a book, and then hopefully through, I have an online community that's about 7,000 people. It's off Facebook because it functions just like Facebook, but it's quite private. So it's off Facebook, but I'd like to expand that and have that be kind of more of a, bigger thing where people can just get together and say, this is the day I'm on, and support each other. And it's not about all or nothing. It's not about forever. It's just about taking a look at it and saying, am I really happy doing this? And could my life be better if I was doing a bit less, and just taking that conversation down. And so there's lots of webinars in that future as well. I think there's tons of beliefs to break and hope to give and whatnot. But I'm starting with the book. So that's what I'm focused on right now.
Do you have any higher end packages, like any upsells, or is your course the highest?
Right now, my course is the highest. And I know that I get a lot of asks for people who would like to be coached to be a Naked Mind coach. So they found their freedom. They're so excited. Naked Mind is the name of my business, by the way. And so they want to go and they say, can I be a coach? Or I've got it from hypnotherapists, psychologists, medical doctors. They say, I want to be certified in this method. Can we put it into my business? So I think a coaching program for people would be huge. I just don't have I just had another baby. I have 3 now, and I'm trying to figure this all out. So I don't have the capacity, but I think that definitely would be huge. There's a lot of people who want to do just sort of live speaking, or retreats. And so I've gotten a lot of requests for that. I'm also going to put that on the back burner until my daughter's at least a year old, because I traveled so much with my other sons that I have this opportunity now as an entrepreneur to stay home with her and not go insane traveling all over the place. So I'm gonna do that. But yes, I think there's huge, just from what people are asking me for, huge potential. But no, I haven't put anything right now. $397, my video course is the highest offer I've got.
Cool. Yeah. So if I were you, since you've got sales coming in probably every day, you're selling this, it seems like crazy. I would put another one-time offer right after the purchase of, I don't know, maybe more training or a call with you, or I don't know. But that's just low-hanging fruit to increase your cart value even more. But anyway, that's some unsolicited advice. I hate giving unsolicited. I hate receiving unsolicited advice. So
I'll take it.
Cool. So last question for you. How long is your webinar? A big question that I always get is, how long should my webinar be? I watched your webinar, by the way, and so I know the answer, but I want to elaborate on this a little bit more.
It's so funny because I had hesitancy about how long the webinar is. My husband was like, okay, way too long. This is a problem. My graphic designer, he's like, yeah, this is too long. And let's keep in mind here that all my sales are coming from people who have sat through to the offer, because the offer doesn't actually pop up until the end of the webinar. And I don't have an email going out to tell anybody about the offer. So my webinar is 2 hours long. The first kind of hour and 15 minutes is the breaking beliefs. And then I spend, or maybe an hour, and then I spend 20, 25 minutes kind of on like what people are going to get, walking them through the course, the value. And then I do 30 minutes of Q&A. And so it's like an hour and 58 minutes long. And everybody said that I was just completely nuts. But, I followed the formula, and so far so good.
It's awesome. Yeah, the most common question that I always get is, how long should this be? And if it ever goes over an hour, people are like, I need to trim it out. It's like I can't tell you yes or no until you start giving me some numbers. Because I've seen longer than 2 hours convert. I've seen shorter than 2 hours convert. I've seen shorter than 1 hour convert. It's just all over the map. People have this belief in their mind that they have to keep it to an hour, and that's not true. As you know, Russell has done webinars over 2 hours before, and he's crushed it. It's just it's all market specific, and you just get the content in there, run it and see how it goes.
Yeah, I think another thing that, I just personally struggled with in addition to the length was number one, putting the urgency and scarcity around it. It just felt really awkward. And what I realized is that I actually want people to act. And I actually say that because I'm like, look, I do this all the time. I see something that should be good for me, but I don't pick it up because there is no reason to act now. And I'm actually doing you a disservice if I don't give you a reason to act now. And once I really embraced that, I started really believing it. And now I believe that that is really true. Like somebody is suffering, somebody is on this 2-hour-long webinar because they have a problem, and I should be doing everything I can to get them to take the next step. I have a massively generous guarantee, which I don't know, maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong, whatever. It sits right with me, but basically it's a 30-day course and I give a 60-day guarantee. And I do that because I don't actually want people's money who it doesn't work for. Like I really want people to find the change and the freedom they're looking for. So I say, look, act now, get it. And so I try to do everything I can to get somebody to act now, pull out every trick in the book. And, I am a marketer by heart. So, sure, I get critics about that on the rare occasion. But the truth is that I do believe now that I'm doing somebody a disservice if I don't get them to actually act. And then the other thing was a typical price point, and I've been told this for my course should probably be around $997. And I think that that's probably true. And I think there is a lot of evidence to say that when people, and I might experiment with it and the results people get, because I do believe that the times that I've given it away for free, like somebody will write me an email and just say, I just can't afford it. I'm really suffering and I'm a bleeding heart. So I'm like, okay, no problem. Like, let me help you out. And then I go and I check and they haven't logged in, or they've watched like one video of it. And so that was like this big aha moment for me. Wait a second, when somebody gets this for free, they don't actually value it and they don't do it. So those were my other big struggles besides the time.
Yeah. You're 100% correct on that. And to go back on the guarantee point right there, when I'm reviewing somebody's webinar, the very first thing that I look at is the offer and the guarantee, because more times than not, the content that they're teaching is good enough to make a sale or two. If they're not making any sales, it's probably because their offer is missing the mark. And the guarantee is like, we've spent so much time in my team, we've reviewed and watched and built probably over 100 webinars in the past 18 months. I mean, it's just insane at this point. We're seeing so many different morphs of offers and like nobody wants to buy a course anymore. So now we're having to reframe the term course and explain it in a different way and come up with unique guarantees. And like guarantees are the quickest way to boost your sales. Like absolutely. And the thing is, let's say that somebody's listening right now, they've got a course and they're afraid to make a really strong guarantee. Like, so one of the guarantees that I'll let anyone who's listening to this right now, this is one of our big secrets. We do a 2-part guarantee. The 2-part guarantee for all of our courses is, part 1, you get a 30-day money back guarantee. And then part 2 is we give them a course completion credit. So when they complete it, they get a credit towards future work with us. So if it's a $997 course, we'll say, okay, listen, I'll pay you to complete this course. And we really are. And from a marketing standpoint, a business standpoint, we're basically incentivizing them to go into our next level products. So from a mindset standpoint, that does a lot of things. Number one, it sets the tone saying like, there are other products that I have to help you even further. And if you complete this, I'll give you credit to go into that next level program. So we're always continually trying to ascend people into the next level. And people want to work for that, right? And even if they do complete it and they ask for a refund or something, if they get results, they're going to feel ashamed if they ask for a refund because you provided what you promised. And it's just like, we don't see the refund rate go up at all. It's amazing. So anyway, I think
cool.
You nailed it on the head with that. So where can people check you out, Annie? I mean, you said the thisnakedmind.com. Is that your main?
That's it. That's where the webinar is right now. I might do something different with the homepage in the future. Again, I'm just kind of experimenting, learning as I go. But right now, that's the webinar registration page, and that will always be my website. But yeah, thisnakedmind.com, not to be confused with the Naked Mind. I don't know where that will lead you, but this.com. Fair warning.
So thisnakedmind.com. So we'll check that out. Your homepage is the webinar. So if you want to go watch the webinar, by all means, go check her out. What's the name of your book?
This Naked Mind: Control Alcohol, Find Freedom, Discover Happiness, and Change Your Life. Hefty subtitle.
Awesome. By the way, I love the funnel that you've got of like getting people in through the book, and then the very next thing that they do is go to the webinar. I actually have a best-selling book that I launched like 3 years ago, and I don't do anything that you're doing. And it's like, I listen to that. I'm like, why am I not leading them to my webinar? Anyway, it's a mistake.
Good. Yay.
So, it's very congruent too, because they're buying information, like give them more information, give them another workshop. Like, they're in that type of consumption mode. But very cool. I had a blast, Annie. This has been a very exciting conversation. I love listening to stories like this. I love learning about, I don't want to say like off the wall product ideas, but like so often I get approached with business opportunity webinars. And so it's refreshing and enlightening to see somebody like you crushing it with a non-business opportunity niche and doing very, very well. I guarantee you'll hit over $500,000 this year if you keep going up from $30,000 and $40,000 a month. So that's really, really exciting. So is there anything else that you want to share with the audience? Any other tidbits, anywhere else they can connect with you before we sign off?
No, I mean, I'd just say that I think, I would owe any success I'm having so far is, I really do at the core want people to find what I've found with this. And so I think that, I definitely have to give that credit before any sort of business tricks, because I think that you're, a sincere intention to help people always kind of makes the best business at the end of the day.
100%. Great. Okay, so we'll sign off today. And thank you for tuning in. Annie, thank you for joining us. I had an awesome time. I know my audience is really going to enjoy this episode. And we will see you all on the next one. Take care.
Thanks so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and we look forward to giving you the next one. You can also follow and watch the behind-the-scenes look at how I'm personally launching a brand new 6- and 7-figure product from scratch at soldwithwebinars.com/TV. And if you'd like to come hang out with other fellow experts, join our Facebook group at soldwithwebinars.com/experts. Join us next time, and I'll see you there.